Hello, hello, hello. Thank you very much for coming. The moment we thought, actually, it's too sunny. No one's going to come, but so delighted to see you here. My name is Carrie Longton. I'm co-founder of Mumsnet.com, which is the biggest and busiest online network of parents, for parents. So you'd think that actually most of the conversation on there would be about kind of nappies and stuff, but actually we've been supporting, involved with the Dove self-esteem program for quite a long time and quite intensively for the past year. Because if you look at Mumsnet, actually, the top 4 forums, or a forum-based website, are Am I Being Unreasonable? AIBU, Yabu, You Are Being Unreasonable, Yanbu. That's sort of very female search validation, chat, relationships, but also style and beauty. So these women are really, lots and lots of our conversations every day are about how people feel about how they look and how that impacts on their self-esteem. There was a brilliant thread today. Those who think you are beautiful, why do you think that? And there's a brilliant comment. This woman said, I know I'm beautiful because my granddaughter's face lights up when she sees me. And I thought, oh, I hope that happens to me one day. But I just think there's just this idea around social media and self-esteem is really important. I'm also a mother to 3 children who are 15, 12, and 8, a 15-year-old girl. So I'm very, very aware of, they sort of live in social media. It's not just, they don't just use it, they live social media. And I'm very aware of some of the negative impacts that can have on their lives. But tonight's not really about listening to me. I'm here to chair the last in a series of debates that are being held by Dove here at Selfridges. And the topic is really dear to my heart. So we're going to look at self-esteem and social media. Is it empowering or damaging? It's unbelievably 10 years since the Dove Real Beauty campaign. Do you remember all the real people in an advert wearing white knickers? Fantastic. If you ever ask on Mumsnet what's your favourite ad, that's often still the one that comes up, even though it's a good 10 years old. But in a recent survey by Dove, 41% of women said that social media influences their idea of beauty, and that's not something you could have said 10 years ago, I don't think, when that campaign came out. And you could see this in a positive light. So, you know, social media, is it democratizing beauty? Is it, we can all get our own picture out there. It's not just models being out there. We can put our pictures out there. So actually, the image of beauty is perhaps is more diverse and better. And we can also gain self-assurance and confidence from being in a community online like Mumsnet, where people are supportive most of the time about how you look. Or it can be damaging. The same survey said 55% of women under 30, the ones I always think, why would you have a self-esteem issue? You're under 30, for goodness sake, enjoy it. But anyway, 55% said social media made them feel more self-conscious about their appearance. So there's definitely a tension here and lots to talk about, as well as our lovely panel here. We're also going to be streaming tonight's Dove debate live as a Google Plus Hangout. How trendy are we? And before I introduce this panel, I'd like to welcome our Hangout panel, who'll be joining us for the Q&A at the end. And I'm not being rude. Apparently, I've got to look that way and not that way. So I'm not ignoring you, panel. But we're going to introduce, please say hello and wave to B. Appleby, who is editor of Girl Talk magazine. Have I got the right person? Hello, everybody wave. Laura Eade, hi, who is the lead peer educator for Girl Guiding UK. And with Dove's help, they've just launched a badge for self-esteem. When I was in the guides, you could just get it for sort of wood smoke or something. But anyway, now you can get a badge for self-esteem. Hello, hello, Laura. And Lauren McDonald, who is a new mum. Congratulations.
Hi, thanks.
Thank you. And an active member of the Dove Facebook community. They're going to be my eyes and ears, and they're going to be listening to this debate and then hopefully come back to some questions. So back to our folks on stage. I'm thrilled to have a really lovely lineup of interesting, fun, spiky, funky women. And I find it a bit cringy when I'm on a panel when someone describes me and I have to sit there smiling. So I am going to throw to you and ask you to briefly introduce yourselves and say why you're here. Now, it's about self-esteem, so feel free to big yourselves up, you know, don't be shy. And I'm going to start with our Olympic athlete, the most successful ever, basically, I think, in my eyes anyway. One of the most, very good swimmer, excellent swimmer. It's Rebecca Adlington. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
I'm an Olympic athlete, and I think for me, being a woman in sport has been something that I think a lot of people want to talk about, as there isn't many women. So it's been something I've been open about, and especially since going on the jungle last year, body issue has been much more prominent with everyone. So I'm looking forward to learning from all of you, as I'm still 25, I'm still an insecure girl, so I'm learning all the time, but also sharing my experiences, and I'm excited about that.
Philippa?
My name's Philippa Diedrichs. I'm a research psychologist at the Centre for Appearance Research at the University of the West of England. And I've been researching the topic of body image for over 10 years now. I'm particularly interested in what influences whether or not we feel good about our bodies and what they can do, but also developing effective programs to promote healthy and positive body image, particularly among young people. And that's why I'm also a member of the Dove Self-Esteem Project Global Advisory Board.
Wow. Elizabeth.
Hello everybody, my name's Elizabeth Cassess. I'm a writer and I'm also a blogger for the Huffington Post, and I suffered a huge amount from low self-esteem as a child. I was bullied, I was teased, I thought I was really ugly. In fact, my book is called The Ugly Little Girl, which is told from the perspective of a 12-year-old who just kind of wakes up one day and just goes, you know what, I just don't like anything about how I look. And I'm here to tell everybody that, you know what, we all feel like that even when we're in their 40s, 50s, 60s. So I'm a champion of self-esteem.
I've got goosebumps and I might cry, actually. So I'm sorry. I'm glad you're here. Thank you. Hattie.
How do I follow that? I am Hattie Brett. I was assistant editor of Grazia magazine, and about a year ago was asked to look at if we could launch a website that would speak to young women in their 20s. And after about a year of research, it was quite clear that this is the type of girl who's ruled by social media and who literally looks at Facebook before she even gets out of bed and wants to constantly add something to the conversation. And we launched The Debrief 4 months ago to talk to that woman, and we've engaged with her quite a lot since then. So hopefully I've got some learnings from those young women rather than just me to add today.
Wonderful. So kicking off, when I was first asked to chair this, a bit nervous, never done this before, so be nice to me, okay? My first thought really was of my teenage daughter, who I think obviously is beautiful. She doesn't always feel beautiful in the way that you don't, and I think just watching the things that she's had to go through. I was going to tell some stories, but I realised I'm on a Google Hangout, and so I'm always talking about her digital footprint, so I mustn't do that. So just generally, though, in her peer group, there are also, I mean, the thigh gap, I mean, crikey, if I have another conversation about thigh gaps, it's genetic, isn't it? I don't know. But, you know, the whole thing about, you know, kisses being filmed and put on Facebook, first kisses, your first kiss put out there. There's a lot to deal with, I think, as a teenager. You're all a lot closer to being teenagers than I am. But I'm guessing even Rebecca, it wasn't in your day quite so big. I mean, how would you feel about being a teenager now in the world of social media?
I'd hate it. Well, me personally, but I kind of, when I came into the spotlight, if you like, after Beijing, I was 19 years old. And so I was at the end of my teenage years, but I found it very difficult from all of a sudden being thrust into this world. And I think it was more Facebook for me when I was growing up rather than Twitter. Twitter really wasn't a big thing, but even then it was kind of like, oh, the photos, everyone stalks everyone's profile and finds them, and it's just kind of like them awkward Facebook profiles of then like airbrushed to the max even on your profile pic, and I'm just kind of looking up, not like that. I take a picture of a cake and that's my Facebook profile, and I'm like, it's just kind of the world I think we're in, and especially at school. I think you go through them changes at school naturally, like where you feel insecure, you've got loads of spots, and your body's changing and everything else, let alone about airing it all on Twitter. I'd have hated it.
But Elizabeth?
Well, as I said, I was teased a lot at school, so I guess the equivalent of a Facebook status for me was someone writing something on the blackboard saying something about me. So I guess for me, if you have low self-esteem, social media is probably going to exacerbate it. It's going to make you feel worse because it's so immediate. And, you know, I think that young girls today are really challenged with all the stuff they have to deal with, so definitely not.
I mean, the debrief and stuff, do you think you're adding to it, or are you helping this young people deal with it, or are you adding to their
I actually
trauma?
think that I am totally with Rebecca and Elizabeth in the sense of it's complicated, and there are bits about it that I hate now, so I can imagine as a teenager I would have hated. I think it's competitive and can make you feel rubbish about yourself if you're already feeling rubbish about yourself. But I'm also going to try and be the voice of positivity, because I think it's easy to bash social media. And the other side of it, I think, is that if you're a 15-year-old girl growing up in a rural area and you think that you're gay and you don't have anyone to talk to about it in your community, I actually think going online and finding a community of people, and that, you know, that's whether you're a feminist or whether you're a so-called geek or whether you're a nerd, can be a really empowering thing. I think the community that's built around Mumsnet has kind of shown that. So when I was a teenage girl, I mean, there were only certain magazines you could read that were targeted at you, and you were supposed to be that girl. And I feel now there's slightly more niches available online.
And Philippa, your research, this is something you must be thinking about a lot, is it? You know, what the impact of social media having on teenagers. I mean, would you like to have been a teenager, or is it what you see fill you with horror or joy?
I think what the research suggests is the more young people use social media like Facebook, the worse they feel about their bodies. But I think I'm with Hattie on this one. I think the beauty of social media is that the control is with us and with young people, and it can actually be quite a liberating experience as long as it's done in a mindful and a positive way.
That's the key, though, isn't it? Because teenagers tend not to be mindful and positive. I mean, if you're going to have to Ask FM and all the horrible things that have gone on with that. I mean, I think we'll come on to sort of what we can do with this later, but I think it can be great. It can be not. I mean, what about older people? I mean, what about not old people, but older people? I mean, do you think the social media can impact on their self-esteem in the same way, or do you think we learn from I think I learned from my teenager somehow. Her great phrase, I love it, is "Let the haters hate, Mum. Let the haters hate." And I just think, you're right. You know, when I'm going, do I look right? I don't feel right. I don't feel right. You go, oh, Mum, let the haters hate. So maybe, you know, sometimes I think because they've grown up with it, sometimes we could learn from them. Anybody?
I think, well, I'll take my mum as an example. She's just like, she thinks every time anyone asks her to be on Facebook, they're stalking her. But it actually has been really rejuvenating for her because, you know, everything is so democratized. There's no kind of age, class, differentiation. So she'll see someone post something of, you know, a young, youthful dress that she wants to buy, and I think it's made her feel more accepted, and so I think it can help. But again, I think it comes back to the fact that if you don't believe in yourself, I don't think social media can be to blame. I think that exists social media existed before magazines, before television. It's something that's very fundamental, and it starts very young. So I think, you know, yeah.
I mean, one of the things that's often talked about, I mean, I've been to endless sort of school talks about it, but, you know, bullying is the thing that most people talk about when they think about social media and young people. And I think they're called trolling. We call trolls something different on Mumsnet, but actually I guess that's sort of just being very, very mean and very facelessly mean on social media. Again, is it something that's new because of social media, or is it particularly insidious because it's on social media? Is it worse to be trolled or bullied on social media than it is on the television or in print or just face to face? I know, Rebecca, you've had to put up with some horrible nonsense in your life, but lots of celebrities have, you know, Beth Tweddle, Stella Creasy, MPs, all sorts. I mean, is it worse, do you think? Is it worse than when it's very coming to your social media?
For me, it was definitely. I think, like, I've dealt with it for kind of 6 years now, and it's one of those things that I think it never gets any easier, but it's always out there. And I love the block button on Twitter. It's like my best friend. It's just like I'm literally blocking every single day, and it's just one of those things. Yeah, I did one yesterday, which, to be fair, I have to say, the one yesterday was right to the point. It just said, "You are ugly." I was like, it was just right straight there. It didn't come up with something clever or kind of whatever else, but it's just, and what shocks me the most is pretty much, I would say 90% of the people that send me a message, I would say are under the age of 18. Pretty much all of mine are younger people that are abusing other people, and I just think, go do something better with your time. Like, there's so much more out there, but I think it's just not personal enough. Like, I think in school it's really personal because they see each other every day, and you kind of know that person, you know their personality, whereas actually most of the people online, well, I don't know any of the people that send me a nasty message. They don't know about me as a person. So I don't think there's that personal connection on Twitter at all, because they don't know who I am, I don't know who they are, and they would never say it in person. That's the thing with Twitter, is I for 6 years I've never had one bad thing to my face, and yet I've blocked about thousands of people on Twitter, but to my face I've never had any. So there's a huge difference of what I think social media brings compared to in schools and stuff, and it obviously if it works with you at school, because that is so personal, it's unbelievable.
Except, I guess, before you could go home, shut the door, cry on your mum's shoulder and forget about it, whereas now it's invasive. It's in your bedroom, it's with you before you go to sleep. So if you are being bullied, it's constant and it's relentless. I mean, I had my goddaughter put something up, and she did not realise how upsetting what she did is. What, you know, she put up a video of herself talking about who was pretty and ugly with her best friend at school, And she's a lovely girl, but I think you can do so much more from behind the computer because, as you said, you don't have the responsibility of looking into that person's eye. And I just called her up, and she just didn't. So I think people don't realise how hurtful they can be because it's easy
become normal. It's become a normal thing to do for people. Because everyone's got an opinion, haven't they, now on social media? Everyone can have an opinion on everything. Yeah. So it's completely... I mean, do you think... I mean, has anybody else had any experience of trolling or come across it on the panel? Fortunately not.
I've been fortunate not to experience it, but what I would say is I think that it's a form of emotional abuse, and we know from a lot of the work around abuse that emotional abuse can often leave much bigger scars than physical abuse, for example. And I think the other thing about social media, when you're bullied in person, there's not as many people around you, whereas someone who's engaging in cyberbullying, they can publish that immediately to hundreds or thousands of people. So it's a much bigger audience, it's anonymous, and also there's a record of it forever. If somebody says something to you, sometimes you can forget it, hopefully as the years go by, but with the internet, there's a permanent record there all the time of those nasty comments.
I mean,
There's a new thing I was reading yesterday called backstalking, where people are going into your old photos on Facebook, picking out the ugliest ones they can find and then re-liking it so that everyone can see, you're right, it's that when it's there, it's there.
I think it's the public thing as well, to pick up on your point, Philippa, that is so hurtful as well. One of our news editors was covertly pictured eating on the tube, and her picture was put on a Facebook group which exists called Women Eating on the Tube, which is as horrible as it sounds. And she was so rightly so upset about it, and to this day it happened 6 weeks ago, and she still now says that every time she eats she thinks about, is someone looking at me across the desk? And I think it's because, you know, she had 12,000 people on that Facebook group commenting and looking at it.
Scary. I eat on the tube all the time. So do you think, I mean, I feel quite strongly about it, obviously, as a mother of 3 kids. But I mean, is there anything that could be done? I mean, if you could do one thing, if you could God for the day of this, and you could do one thing, whether it's technical or whether it's about, kids talking to kids, what do you think we could do? Is there anything we could actually, anything we could learn or could do from this that could get rid of the bullying, online bullying, that could make online bullying less possible or less likely? Or
I think education. I think it's like what you put on Twitter as well. I think for myself, obviously, it's a little bit different, but as in definitely for younger guys putting on, because they just think, oh, well, I've only got 20 followers and they're all my mates, so I'll just send this. But then someone retweets it, and then it kind of goes round, and then all of a sudden there's 1,000 likes on this photo that was so innocent to start with. And I just kind of think, why isn't there in school where you do like your general studies lesson, that lesson where you do nothing and it's so pointless, that I can remember being at school thinking, what is this lesson? What is it even for? Why aren't they using that as a way to kind of teach about social media in general, not just kind of Twitter and Facebook, but loads of different things to do with online, and where no matter what form it is, about educating them about what you put on, because loads of people don't know that you can make your profile private, that you have to request a follow, and how to block and all that sort of stuff, about educating the younger guys, definitely.
And apparently there's this new filter that's going into schools. I think it's in 1,500 schools already, called Impero. And what it does is it's tracking what kids are doing in school. So if they start saying things like GNOC, which apparently means get naked on camera, or any of the kind of like terrible acronyms that are used, then it can find the bullying and the negativity. So that's a great thing. And I guess the other thing for me is it needs to become socially unacceptable. That, we need to kind of like get quite tough about this, and it's just it's not on, it's not right.
In the same way it would be not acceptable to say it to someone's face.
Exactly. And parents need to lead it. I mean, parents aren't necessarily the best models. They're always on their phone, so kids get on their phones, so it's more time on their phone. So I think it needs to become something which is really, ingrained in society.
I think it's about the anonymity as well. I think it would be interesting to think about if people couldn't join Twitter unless they had a name and a face to them, because I think a lot of the worst examples of trolling are from people who are faceless, and therefore they feel they can get away with it. And
from your research, I mean, you must have been looking at this for a while. What can we do? Is there anything, I bet people ask you, governments are asking you, Twitter's asking you, people are asking you for your opinion. Is there anything you could think of, you've come across, that you think we could make a big difference?
There's the usual things with any kind of social problem like this, like legislation or educating young people in schools not to do it, becoming more aware of it. But I think another thing is thinking about why people are doing it. And I think the reason people do it online might be just the new vehicle. Bullying and teasing has been around forever, and often it comes from a low sense of self-esteem. The people who are doing it, the perpetrators, are often people who don't feel great about themselves either. And so I think having that broader perspective as well, and going to the root cause, which is insecurities, and the idea that for some people to make themselves feel better, that's to put other people down.
Does that help you, Rebecca, when they're getting those things? When you're going to listen to Philippa's words and then think they must just have low self-esteem? It's not.
No.
Sorry.
It's only because I will never understand it. With most things, I think in life, you always try and put yourself in someone else's shoes. That's what you naturally do. Yet I will never understand why somebody has taken the time to find somebody to then write them a nasty message. And it's worse when they follow me. I'm like, why are you following me? Just unfollow me. I don't understand it.
Like going to go and jump in a pool or something and go swim.
Go do something with your life.
Segueing quite clunkily, but I mean, perhaps one of the reasons that the whole self-editing thing that people still do. I'm coming back to watching teenagers do this. But there's a recent study found that 41% of women have retouched images of themselves before they uploaded them onto social media. And I hypothesize that the only reason the other 59% haven't is they don't know how to, because I wouldn't know how to. But have you done it? I mean, would you do it? Does it matter that people? I mean, models have always been able to do this, haven't they? They're sort of the media have always been able to do this to celebrities. So is this not a good thing that actually we can all make ourselves look a little bit zhuzhier or different?
I think it's how much you retouch it. I think, obviously there's them apps now where you can make yourself thinner or bring out your cheekbones, but general filters on Instagram, I love a filter. Yeah, the ones that are just black and white and all that sort of stuff. I love all that because I think it gives it an arty feel or whatever. I like being able to kind of do something different with it. So I always put a filter on Instagram. So
what about, you come from the world of Grazia as well? I mean, are you allowed to are you allowed to say whether you retouch or not retouch your images?
On Grazia, I don't know because I don't work in the picture department, but I think I was really surprised by that statistic at first when I read it, and then I thought about it and I thought, I've never retouched a picture of me before I put it on social media, but I definitely self-edit and think about what I want to tweet and what I Instagram and think about the image, I guess, that you're putting out there, and I think that can be really competitive. And certainly I've had low days where you look at your feed and everybody's out having way more fun than you, and it does make you feel worse about yourself, undoubtedly, I think. But on the other hand, I was thinking about it and I was like, well, maybe it's good that people are self-editing, because at least they're recognizing, therefore, that it's in a public space and it's going to be there forever. And actually, that's probably, that message needs to get through too, because that's what I would hate, the fact that the first thing I do now before I employ someone is Google them. So you have got to think about what you put out there.
And the whole selfie, the rise of the selfie, I think this probably is the year of the selfie. I bet Barack Obama's really regretting that one that he got with that nice little blonde lady from Sweden or whatever it was, and his wife gone mad. But again, when I was younger, the worst thing you could be was a show off. Your parents, don't show off. Whatever you do, you just mustn't show off. You mustn't. And to me, the whole selfie, look at me having a wonderful time, is just, I find it quite hard, because it's it just feels like showing off. I mean, I just don't like it. But is it choreographed spontaneity? Does it matter? Again, are they the ultimate expressions of self-esteem? Look at me, I'm here and I'm free and I'm out there. Or is it worrying self-attention seeking?
I think it kind of depends on the motivation. I mean, I find it quite weird, because when I was little, from the age of 11 till 16, I refused to have my photo taken. And most teens of my generation were just it was oh no, I look awful. Yeah. And yet you're finding teens now putting selfies on, I again take my stepdaughter or my goddaughter, and I think if the motivation is, okay, I have to look pretty because then it means I'm good enough, I'm not sure that's right. I mean, everyone likes to look nice, but if it's so defined by the number of pictures you put up, and I do feel that that there are a lot of kids that are putting selfies up all the time because they actually don't believe in themselves. And if they change this and they change the angle and they do this, they're going to become more and more like models. And actually, it's like none of it is really that important. And it's, you know, it's like, let's put up other stuff. You know, let's create a new type of selfie, a self-esteem, which is something which shows how great you are beyond your looks. And so, yeah, I think it is worrying. I think it is worrying.
I think the worrying thing is, it's actually, my daughter said, oh, I got 74 likes, you know.
Yeah, completely.
On my picture. That's worrying. I mean, you know, really? I mean, you knew 74 people, but that's marvellous, darling. But, you know, I mean, I just think it's very odd. And if you don't get many likes...
I think that's exactly it, because you want to be liked and accepted, and it's not, you know, it's not enough just to be you. You have to have this recognition.
People must want to take selfies with you all the time. Do you get that a lot?
Yeah, I don't mind that, though. I don't mind it.
We all did, so yeah, we've all had a selfie with Rebecca.
I think it can be a positive thing, though, because I can remember seeing the one from London Fashion Week where one of the supermodels were eating a burger, and I just loved that image, and I don't know why, but I just kind of, for me, I don't know the world of supermodels, but all I see is someone that's stick thin, and oh my God, do they only eat lettuce, and that's kind of my image of them. Yet for me, I was like, oh my God, they do eat burgers, so then they must work hard to kind of eat that, and all this, that it kind of just changed my way I thought about them just from one selfie, which is pointless. But I also think the whole makeup, no makeup ones, and all that you get to see the real people, because if magazines are airbrushing them and changing them the way they look, that actually you can go on and see a celebrity that you've just seen flawless skin and whatever else actually posting a selfie of them with like spot cream on or something ridiculous, and you actually recognize that they are just normal humans, so actually it does make you feel better as well.
Does any of you do the cancer research naked selfie, the sort of no makeup selfie? Anyone do that?
No, because I think people kept forgetting to donate money. So I just donated money because I kept seeing so many, and then I was like, where's the donation? It got a bit lost.
What did you think of that one as a sort of...
I was quite conflicted on that because a really close member of my family had cancer, and part of the recovery process, she really liked wearing makeup and found that really empowering. And so I wasn't entirely convinced by the message of no makeup selfie. Whilst, you know, I totally support the idea of young women driving social campaigns, and it obviously raised a lot of money, which is brilliant for cancer research. I didn't personally feel the connection between no makeup and cancer was a good one. And I felt personally, lots of people tried to, you know, tag me on Facebook, and I got a bit of grief for not joining the crusade, and that made me feel rubbish about myself. So I wasn't, it wasn't my favourite one.
Apparently there was bullying as well, because some women were saying that the selfies had permanent makeup, you know, and so that wasn't, and it just became a bit confusing. And for me, the Stephen story, the young guy that passed away from cancer, is far more powerful because it's real. And there was another one I saw recently about a woman who died of cancer, and 2 years later she asked a friend to send a letter to her husband once he'd found a new partner, saying, you know, I bless this, go away on holiday, I want you to know I'm still in your heart. That kind of thing that touches you, I think that's much more powerful than just random selfies that you just, it didn't connect with me personally.
But Philippa, as a way of making a point, though, I think about women and self-esteem and hiding and all that stuff, did it, in terms of what you know as your research, is it as an interesting thing for you?
It didn't really come to mind at the time when I saw it. I think I was like Hattie, didn't really see the connection, but after listening to everyone, I think I've just thought, well, isn't it really sad that putting a picture of yourself without makeup on is some big thing to raise money, because it's so different from the norm. And one of the things we haven't picked up on about selfies, I think that, as Rebecca said, they can be a way of putting more diversity out there in different images. But the nature of a selfie really is only from here up. So it's very much focused on your appearance. It's not showing you doing anything or the rest of your life. But the other thing is, I think the extent to which we do this is quite narcissistic as well. It's very much focused on yourself rather than necessarily other people or what you're doing in your life or anything else. And I think that that's probably one of the other sides to social media, is that it can be very narcissistic and very much focused on yourself as well.
Well, I think the whole thing is self. I remember doing Twitter for the first time. I mean, I was a really early adopter, and then I just dropped it for ages because I was thinking, why does anybody care that I'm in the hairdressers with a hangover? I mean, just why would anybody? I'm tweeting, I'm in the hairdressers with a hangover. I think that's what, to my generation, you just don't do that. You don't talk about yourself. It's not what you do. So I think this generation will, and maybe that is building their self-esteem. Maybe they're going to be the generation that can take penalties, in football matches and believe in themselves because they've been allowed to talk about themselves. They're allowed to be out there. They're allowed to have an opinion, even from a really early age. So I want to talk a bit about, are there any positives in terms of social media and self-esteem? Are there any, it's easy to bash. I mean, it's easy to pick holes in it, and I think there definitely are some problems. But are there any positive things? Isn't print journalism or television the baddie when they're just because they push messages out? And I think what we find on Mumsnet. So if someone came on Mumsnet and said, Rebecca Adamson's ugly, that wouldn't stand, because the wisdom of crowds would come round and hopefully come round, and what you've got is this two-way conversation. We'd take it down anyway, but equally the point of social media is that you can engage in a conversation. It's a two-way thing. So could it be a positive thing? Could it be a thing where you allow the peer group or your people around you to build you up? I mean, got any positive to say? I think
for me that the internet's changed quite recently. Like, I think we've gone through the early teething problems of the adolescence phase of the internet, where it was a bit negative and a bit down. And I've noticed that, like, for example, people have been doing this thing called 100 Happy Days on Facebook, where every day they have to say something positive about their life. And I think all of that is really good, because we could, in the same way it reached loads of people with negative stuff for you, it can reach loads of people with very positive stuff, and it creates change. And they're forums that you can belong to, like as you said, if you're a gay guy, you wouldn't never be able to if we didn't have it. And this event, I mean, it's like, we've on Google Hangout and all of it. I mean, we're all tweeting and everything. So I think we can help others massively.
We just need to mobilize it.
Yeah, I mean, Arianna Huffington's just recently launched her book Thrive, and she's posting every day positive messages, encouraging women to be in their truth, to do what they need to, that sometimes they are their own worst enemy and dreams are possible. When you see that every day, it's like celebrating 3 things you did every day. We do that at home with my stepdaughter. It's all regular, and it takes 21 days to change and anything in your life. And if you keep doing it, then it could be a brilliant thing for us.
I also like the idea of using it as a tool for social activism. So it gives consumers and young people an opportunity to speak directly to companies or directly to media, whatever that is, and tell them what they want to see and what they don't like. And whether that's through a hashtag, Misrepresentation Project has a great one of not buying it. If you see an ad that's objectifying or negative, and you can call out the companies. So I think that's a really powerful aspect of it when it can be used as a tool to empower people who don't normally have a voice to have a voice.
I totally agree with that. I mean, it's been 4 months since we launched the debrief, and in that time we've done reports on girls in Brazil who are using the hashtag I don't deserve to be raped to raise awareness of sexual assault in Rio. We have done stories on the Yes All Women hashtag in response to the Elliot Rodgers shooting, which I thought was really interesting. Everyday sexism we haven't talked about, but obviously the amazing Laura Bates. And I think movements like that are A, helping young women have a voice and feel connected to other people, and B, really can make you feel that you're supported. I think everyday sexism is an amazing tool for good, really, and people realize that they're not alone in feeling that way, and so you can actually get a lot of support from social media, I think, and it's easy to bash it, but it's harder to celebrate it, I think.
I think so many people say to me, oh, why do you stay on Twitter if you get trolls and all this sort of stuff? Because for me, I get so many younger guys that are kind of, oh, I've got a gala this weekend, or I'm competing here, or I've just got injured and I'm really struggling, and I get to interact with them and I get to have a conversation. And especially for women in sport, I get so many messages saying, you're my idol, I want to be like you in the Olympics, and that's why I stay on social media. And for me, growing up, I didn't have an idol or a sports star because it kind of wasn't accessible, and I grew up in such a small town in Mansfield. We didn't have an Olympian or anyone for me to look up to, and yet now, if I can just help one person, just be like, it's okay, we've all been injured, stick at it, just take your time, and then I get another message in a year's time saying, thank you so much, you've really helped me. That means the absolute world, and that's why I'd never ever come off Twitter, because it's just the best thing when you get their messages from the guys that are interested in sport, or somebody who is having a tough time who can just say, I look up to you. That means more.
And what an amazing thing to be able to tweet your idol. I mean, how, you know, to have that access, it is amazing. I mean, I obviously have to stick up for social media because Mumsnet at its best, and it's not always at its best, but Mumsnet at its best is amazing. And the things that have always kept us going, when we were talking about Mumsnet, we started in 2000, we didn't make any money for an awfully long time. We just trolled along thinking, what on earth are we doing here? And then you get an email from someone saying, I wouldn't have got through the last 6 months without you. You know, you sort of saved my life. Just being able to talk to people going through the same boat, who've got children with the same problems or marriage with the same problems. And now I would have a little cry, because I always cry at those things. And then I would just move on and think, yeah, it's worth it, and we're just going to keep going. And those are the, sort of the power of the internet when at its best is just fantastic. So on that positive note, the power of the internet on our Google Hangout, I'd like to go and see if B, Laura, and Lauren are still there. Are they there? Hello?
Yes.
I'm not allowed to turn around. So, guys, have you been listening? And it would be interesting to know a couple of thoughts from you. So, B, I'm going to come to you first.
Yes.
What, you know, any thoughts on what we've talked about so far, and any questions you've got for our panel?
Well, I sort of see there being two real negatives about social media for girls, especially. One is the bullying, which you've covered, which is really just, like you've all said, it's not a new thing, it's just that there's this huge outlet for it. But the other problem I really think is the obsession with image, which comes from selfies and Instagram. It's not just how you look, but it's photographing everything. And I think that in Girl Talk, we've launched a campaign called Girls Are Amazing, which is about positive role models and to try to show girls that they can be of value in areas which aren't anything to do with how they look, and that there are role models who are women to look up to, who, you know, like Rebecca, have achieved things which aren't anything to do with looking pretty. Not I'm saying don't look pretty, but like, you know, like it's about being a sports person, it's about achieving something else. But when there is all this pressure to look good, and then the obsession with posting pictures of yourself, I was just wondering if the panel thought how you can really how you can help girls to be less fixated with how they look when this is happening all around them.
Yeah, and no disrespect, but do magazines not perpetuate that? I mean, I do think magazines are as guilty as that as social media. No? Or am I wrong there? I mean, just think, if you look at magazines, I'm not saying Girl Talk or anybody, but if you look at all the magazines, they're about look better, beach fit bodies, all that stuff. I mean
all magazines are about.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think it starts from a really young age. So, like, when you see a little boy, you often say, "Oh, you've done that really well. You're really smart. You're really strong. Aren't you clever?" And girls get so defined from, you know, beginning as being cute and sweet and pretty and comb your hair and blah blah blah. And I just think that we've just been defined too long by what we look like. We're judged. 90% of us think we're judged more by our looks than by who we are. And I think it's about redefining beauty to be much more about our talents and skills and passions, you know, whether we're creative or mindful or sporty, whatever it is, but it's just beyond skin and hair and teeth. So that's
interesting. Maybe the debrief and Girl Talk, because you're doing the young girls, and you're doing the women who hopefully will be perhaps mothers one day. I think, you know, I think there seems to be a big role for parents here. It seems to me, parents and schools and people who are bringing the new youth on, and actually how we speak to our children, and how, I mean, I'm really aware of that actually since working with Dove, that kind of, oh, do I look fat in this? You know, you do it all the time. It's just subconscious, you know, and you think you're talking to your children in a friendly, normal way, but being on a diet, I feel guilty for everyone on a diet, you know, but I'm only on a diet because I'm going to feel healthy, not because I want to get thin, and it is a bit of a minefield. Is there any way we can, you've done the research, I'm just looking at you, hoping that you've got the answer to all our questions.
I think as an individual, there's two things that I always say to people. One is trying to focus on what your body can do rather than what it looks like. I think we can have fun with our appearance through fashion, through makeup and things like that, but also focusing on how our body feels and what it can do. I also think, as has already been brought up, being very mindful of the conversations we have and the language we use, in which we can often inadvertently reinforce a lot of the pressures by saying things like, you look great, have you lost weight? or, you know, she's too fat to be wearing those jeans, and all those types of comments really keep the pressure up and going. And then I think in schools there's a role to be played for really effective programs that give young people the skills to do that, and the Dove Self-Esteem Project does a lot of work in that area. But then I think we also need to move beyond thinking about individuals and start thinking about challenging the broader social pressures that are out there, which, you know, go right through to gender, but also industries that are capitalising on this concern with appearance.
So, when you're looking for models or people to appear in the magazine, are you very mindful of what they look like, whether they're fat, you know, fatter or thinner or than the average model? Or, I mean, do you have to be careful when you're dealing with young girls to make sure that you've got a range of diverse appearances and don't define beauty in one way?
Definitely. It's hard to get models who aren't traditionally pretty, but we try and show a diverse range of girls in the magazine so that any girl reading the magazine can see herself represented. And also we try and show women who aren't pop stars and aren't TV stars, who are writers and engineers and scientists, so that there's just more being fed into our readers so that they don't believe that the only way to be is one particular very narrow ideal, which was what was around when I was a kid. And even though there wasn't social media, you know, it was still only one ideal, I think.
Thank you. I just wanted to see if the Girl Guides, Lauren is here. Hello. So have you had much take-up for the self? I should let you ask the question first, actually, before I ask you questions.
That's okay. So kind of my question is just around something which is called body talk. So you've spoken quite a lot about the bullying online and the images and photoshopping and everything else. But a lot of people on their Facebook status or send messages via Twitter just always quite a lot mention about diets they're going on, or that they need to lose some weight before they can achieve this bikini body. I was just really wondering kind of how you felt this was impacting young people, and whether you maybe thought this was more damaging to them, just the general talk we always talk about, how good you look, how you don't look, how big your bottom is, or anything like that. And that's made a lot worse on social media, because people can message things without them even thinking about actually how damaging it is to everyone else who reads it.
Did you all get that one? I mean, I think to sum up, it's the fact that what I was just saying, we all talk about it all the time. And how do we rein ourselves in? Or are we ever going to stop it, really? I mean, I think, you know, there's some campaigns you can see, there's a very definite way we can do this. And this one just feels so linked into the female psyche, or am I being negative? Am I being sort of, you know, defeatist? Is it possible to break it out?
I think it's got a lot worse, and I think that's because celebrities do it all the time. You know, that they're the role models, and I think it's kind of there's a new program going into schools which is really getting this. It's called fat talking, ritualized conversations. It's like, it's, you know, oh, you've lost weight is kind of a bit of a negative compliment, because it's kind of like you're fat before. It's creating awareness of the fact that a lot of our space and time and energy is being taken up with this, and getting young girls to discuss it and getting them to change the conversation when it comes up. So it's almost like, oh, that's a fat talking moment. We need to switch it, because it's behavioural, it's every day, and so there needs to be triggers so that it changes. And schools is probably a really good place to start, but I think mums are also quite guilty of it as well. They're much more likely to fat talk than non-parents.
I actually think it's probably one of the easiest things that we can change, because you don't need to rely on anyone else. You just need to become more self-aware of it. And I think if you think about when you see someone for the first time, often, particularly among women, although the research suggests that men do this as well, we often talk about our appearance or how they look. But there's lots of other things, particularly when you see a friend just saying, it's so nice to see you, or, you know, it's really great, you look so happy, or whatever. I actually don't think that's particularly hard to do. The hardest thing is just becoming aware of how automatic it is.
I think that's why it's important to talk about it, though, because I hadn't ever thought about the term bossy until I watched that video of Sheryl Sandberg talking about bound bossy, and the fact that we would never talk about a young boy, it would never describe a young boy as bossy, but that's the word that's described to a young woman who is reaching and ambitious and has a voice, and it's such a female-only term, and it really hadn't struck me until I watched that, and now I think it's made me much more mindful about the language that you use. So it is an individual thing that I think you can change as long as we keep talking about it and we have discussions like this.
But self-esteem is inevitably, you know, coming and saying, oh, you look happy, you look like having a nice life. It doesn't make me feel quite the same, just someone saying, you look great. I mean, I think you're right, you look great, have you lost weight? Is, you know, if you could just stop at the you look great, I think there is some, am I wrong in thinking that there's something about how you feel about yourself? It's just so out there. I mean, I'm just playing devil's advocate here, but, you know, when we looked at the Dove Beauty campaign, which was so popular, wasn't saying, look at these women, aren't they successful, or aren't they? They were saying, look at them, they're beautiful. They're just not what traditionally people thought. But look at them, aren't they beautiful? They're just beautiful women who look like they're having a good time and having good fun. It wasn't saying, look at these people, they look like they're scientists. You know.
I don't think there's a problem with commenting on people's appearance as such, but the issue that we have now is how common this is, and as Elizabeth was saying, particularly from a young age, when lots of people see a young girl, they say, you look so pretty. And that's a message that you hear, and so it's reinforcing that kind of pressure and focus on appearance all the time. So it's not to say that it's not important and that you can't compliment people on their appearance, but it's being mindful at the extent to which we do that all the time.
I think what shocks me is that I think with women, I think especially, I've got two sisters, I'm very women oriented, all my best friends are girls and stuff, and we do it all the time, oh, you look like you're but the thing is, I've never once spoken with my sisters, with all my friends, about our insecurities. We've never sat down. We say the odd thing like, oh God, I feel fat today, or that thing like that, but we talk so much about, oh, you look great, have you lost weight, and all that sort of stuff, but we don't talk enough about our insecurities, saying, this really bothers me and I don't know how to get over it. I've never sat down with my friends and fully expressed things like that before. And I think that's the sad thing, is that we talk so much about, oh, you look great, but actually when someone's going through a tough time or they've put on a bit of weight, I never sit down and say, you okay, what's going on? And it's not because they put on weight, it's because they look unhappy. And even though I say you okay, it's kind of, we don't really relate it. And if somebody asks me, it's like all the time, I'm fine, yeah, I'm okay. That's my standard answer. Yet inside I'm like, I'm really not, I'm upset and this is hurting me. And I don't talk enough about my insecurities enough. And I always be like, oh my God, you look amazing. Yeah.
Because you can have a million people telling you look great, but if you don't feel it yourself, it's pointless. And like when we look in the mirror, we are our own worst critics. We talk to ourselves so much more negatively than we do to the people around us. And it's just trying to kind of see the positive rather than putting ourselves down and treating ourselves badly.
I want to make sure we've got time to get to Lauren and some questions from the audience. But Laura, I just wanted to say, have you had much take-up for the self-esteem badge, and do you see this as a way that we can actually make a real impact on young women?
Yeah, so there has been a lot of interest, which is absolutely fantastic. We're just training peer educators within Girl Guiding to meet that demand at the moment. And I think it is a way forward, linking in with education in schools and everywhere. If people can recognise body talk, for example, we run this fantastic activity that as soon as someone says something about something which relates to body talk, they shout back at them body talk really loudly, and actually that gets them thinking and recognising that it's not right to keep saying it, because it normalises it. And if we keep thinking it's okay, then you'll always be thinking, okay, well, I always need to check whether my bum looks big or not, or something like that. So we just need to change that to make people realise that they can compliment people in positive ways without concentrating on what they look like.
Okay, thank you very much, Laura. And Lauren, I'd like to come. You've been waiting patiently all the way through. Thank you very much. Must stop looking behind. I'm sorry, it feels so rude. So you're a new mum, and I know from the Mumsnet boards that sometimes that can be a bit of a tricky time sometimes with self-esteem. You've got time to think about it. But you've been listening to the conversation. Have you got a question for the panel or a comment you'd like to make?
So during my my childhood and my teens up to my early 20s, I had very low self-esteem, and that manifested itself in depression and self-harm and ultimately an eating disorder. I'm now fully recovered, but what I'm interested in is that, do you necessarily think that social media can encourage women to gauge their self-worth and identity through comparison and people-pleasing? As I feel that that was actually one of the causes of a lot of my illness, was comparing myself to other people and not feeling good enough.
Anybody want to go with that one?
I guess I went through exactly the same thing. So I had a terrible lack of confidence. I took it out on myself. I punished myself. I had an eating disorder too, and yet there was no social media in my time, and I think this is something that's existed since forever, except we didn't have awareness of it before. I think we're just much more aware of the problem now, which I guess is a really good thing, because we're having debates like this. I wish we'd had a debate like this when I was younger. And I guess the answer is, for me, is that social media will not make you feel good if you're feeling bad anyway. I mean, if you're having a bad day, it's just I encourage everyone just not to go on Facebook, because everyone is over glamorizing their lifestyle and making themselves look much prettier, bigger, smarter, whatever than they really are. But for me, what changed everything was really understanding who I was, getting help, because it's very important if you're not feeling good about yourself to get help, and there are experts out there. And there's nothing wrong with psychotherapy. People used to say psychotherapy to me when I was little, and I was like, oh my God, that means you're mad. You're not at all. It's just getting help. And I think that is where this needs to go, rather than possibly blaming social media, because I suffered a lot, and you know that I wasn't on Facebook at all. So
anybody else like to? I'm glad I'm delighted that you're well, and congratulations on your baby. Did that answer your question, Lauren? Can you hear me? That was I can't see when you do that because I'm picking that way. But anyway, I just want to make sure we've only got about 10 minutes left, and I meant to warn you guys that you should have your questions ready, because they're kicking us out here at 7:30. So has anybody got a question for the panel? I'm just going to go for the first hand that raises. Oh, I can see. Thank you for coming.
Hi, it's a question for Rebecca. I read recently that you may have had a few nips and tucks here and there, and I wonder what kind of led to that. I mean, was it the instant criticism after the Olympics, or were there issues before you became sort of famous?
Sorry, what was the last bit? Was it before I was famous?
Yeah, I mean, was it a direct reaction to all the criticism that you had, or was it something that you were either sort of saving up to have, or you know?
I think anything that's like personal, that sort of stuff has got to come from you, whatever else. It's like me. I went to the hairdressers the other day, and I was like, I want to be blonder, so they dyed my hair blonder, and even stuff with fake tan, fake eye, all that sort of stuff. That's kind of how you want to feel. Like, I like being pale, so I wouldn't ever, like, I know loads of my friends keep saying to me, oh, have fake tan, and I'm like, oh no, I like being pale. And I think you just embrace you a lot more, and I think that's what we've all tried to say tonight, is that you've got to accept who you are and embrace that, and kind of just do things that make you happy, and that's always personal. And I think we've all done a great job of that, and everything that we've been talking about tonight.
Anybody else? Lady over there.
Sorry. Thank you. We've talked a lot about the protection and things that there are in place to help young girls feel good about themselves, which is brilliant. And all starts when you're young, absolutely. I think they're fantastic. I just wonder, it doesn't, becoming an adult and suddenly being able to see things a bit clearer and hopefully being a bit more confident doesn't solve everything. You're still vulnerable and scared and whatever. And I wondered if there's anything in place to protect 20-somethings or 30-somethings or new mums or whatever, and if you think that we need to actually focus on them a bit more now rather than education and young girls. I wondered what you thought about that.
I have to say, I am a Dove, I do work with Dove, and I'm not here just to promote, I'm not being do that, but I do think some of the stuff that Dove has done in terms of the things they did 10 years ago, and actually if anyone's not seen the Sketches film about trying to get women to realise, Sketches and Patches, that they are, that's what I was talking about before, about being beautiful. It does matter still to lots of people. It's not about being beautiful, it's just that you're okay in your own skin, that you feel good about yourself. And I think, so I think Dove has done quite a lot to help that, and I think there is definite need. I mean, that thread I talked about today, this woman was saying, I've always thought I'm not ugly, I'm just plain. You know, it's just this heartbreaking thread about saying, you know, and I've been abused in the past, and I've never really thought of myself. But I've always had quite handsome boyfriends. There must be something about me, you know. And there's this hilarious, bizarre sort of mixture of who people think they are. And so I think one of the things that can help, I suppose, is sort of social media and the movements around social media that can help other women somehow come up to you, because sometimes you won't believe it of yourself. Other people, other men, women, or groups come and say, reassure you that it's okay just to be who you are, and that's good enough in itself. That was very waffly. I'm sorry, my panel are much more articulate.
I think that you're right. I think obviously talking about young girls is really important, but I think I've just come out of my 20s, but I definitely feel like 20-somethings are bashed in this day and age, you know. Every headline is generation depressed, generation lost, generation vexed, generation Peter Pan, you know. It's all quite negative, the way in which 20-somethings are talked about, I think. And I think that language needs to change, and we need to stop talking about that, because yes, there are lots of problems. But equally, I think young women today are amazing, and I think social media is helping them have that voice and talk about stuff. Have you seen Tavi's TED talk on still figuring it out? It's amazing, and she kind of talks about, you know, that sense of your 20s is okay. It's okay to be like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm still figuring it out.
14, yeah. I just don't know. Yeah, I kind of think that this kind of thing is really important, and just talking about, because I don't think we do talk with our friends truthfully about how we feel, and I think we do get locked up and we don't express ourselves. And I think just sitting and talking to people in this kind of forum and making connections and all the work that Dove's doing, and there are other organisations out there, the stuff for eating disorders and bullying, and there's more and more and more. But I think we just need to be honest and talk. And if, you know, there are experts in lots of different fields, whether it's body image or self-esteem or confidence, and there are people out there that can help. And I think the moment you realise you don't feel good in yourself is the first step to recovery, because I went for years making weird decisions in my life because I didn't believe I was enough. And the moment I kind of had a bit of 3 bad things happen to me, a meltdown, went to Australia, went, okay, I'm going to get my life together. It was like the pray bit of Eat, Pray, Love, and it changed my life. I mean, I was forced into doing it because things happened for me, but if you feel that way, it's just there's so much out there to help, really.
I think sometimes the anonymity, we found on Mumsnet anyway, the anonymity allows people to have those conversations that you can't have even with your closest friends. I know anonymity on Twitter can be a problem, and it's difficult to track them down, but what we found when people have bashed us for having anonymous posters, it's like, because sometimes saying, I don't like myself today, or I don't like my child today, or I just feel like this, is easier to say to a stranger, or to somebody that you could be a stranger. They could be somebody you know really well, but they don't know that you know you well. Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of feeling, the freedom that social media gives you to just let that stuff out. I think can be, if in the right environment, hopefully you can find that for every generation. You can find the environment that allows you to let yourself talk about things that do bother you, and then people can come around you and help.
I think we started with our friends, like it's just something so stupid, as in if I'm spending the day with my boyfriend or whatever, after like 10 minutes on my phone, it's like, put your phone down and talk to me. And we do that with our friends now. Amongst all my friends, we have a rule: no phones at the dinner table, no matter what. They have to go in our handbag and they have to be on silent, because I think you've just got so used to, I do it all the time. If I'm at dinner, I just put my phone instantly on the table, because I'm like, and then if someone goes to the toilet, I'm like, oh, I'll check Twitter. Why I'm sat here with my friend and I should be fully engaged in what she's saying and asking her the questions that we spoke about earlier. Are you into, what's bothering you? Are you happy? And talking more. And so we've made that a rule now.
Lauren's laughing. You enjoy it, Lauren? You okay? Excellent. Last 2, I think, just here and then there. We'll have to be quite brief.
Hi, I just want to say thank you to everyone. It's been very interesting. I just wondered, Elizabeth, with your book, is it for a particular age group?
Well, I guess I wrote it for a 12-year-old, because I wrote it when I saw a 12-year-old 2 years ago that looked just like I did at that age. She had frizzy hair, big thick glasses, metal mouth, and it was just like, I looked at her and went, look at that ugly little girl. It made me write. So in my head, I've got a 12-year-old, which is the age when we start becoming aware of who we are. But if anyone's ever suffered from low confidence or low self-esteem, then they'll like it, because it talks very personally about what I went through, but in a fun, magical way, because there's a night school for self-esteem called Oddbods, where all kinds of things happen, a bit like Hogwarts and Harry Potter.
Has it got a happy ending?
Of course.
Excellent. That's all we need.
Of course.
Last question, then we'll have a happy ending here.
Hi. We've talked a lot about how self-esteem affects young women. I wonder, like, having forums like this is amazing, but how about young boys growing up and teenage boys?
Very good question. You've got 30 seconds on boys. Anybody? I have a son, and I have a red-haired son. So I could do a whole debate on red hair, frankly, and I find it, I absolutely think that we need to focus on our boys. I think there's an awful lot done for girls, and there is lots of reasons for that. But certainly the stuff we've done with Dove, when we had to help them look at their self-esteem program, there was lots of mums on Mumsnet saying we must have something like this for boys. It's just as important. They talk about it even less. If anything, they don't have the words to verbalise it, I don't think, and yet there's an awful lot of pressure on them to look buff and to have six-pack and to be this. So I think that would be the next debate. I think we haven't got much time to do it now, but if everyone wants to come back again in about a year's time, we'll do boys. I think that would be fantastic. That would be a really democratisation of beauty. I'm really sorry to have to draw it to a close, but thank you so much to my lovely panel. Give me a little round of applause. And to Lauren, Laura and Bea. Let's put some smileys. And thank you to Dove for organising this, and thank you all very much for coming on a very sunny evening. And I'm supposed to sum up. I wish I could just say, press a button, press F4, this will all be fine. It's not like that. It takes good parenting, it takes good leadership, it takes us all to take responsibility. I think if we can do that, then social media can be a fantastic thing for self-esteem. If we don't, we don't at our peril, is what I would say. So thank you again so much for coming. Thank you to the Google Hangout people, and have a great evening, great weekend. Thank you.